Commanders 21, Giants 6. Welcome to Giants Nation. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, the Football Grump. And unfortunately, this is how the Giants start their seasons. This is painful. For the third straight year, the Giants have not scored a touchdown in week one. And, there was some stat that came out that they're the only team to do that besides two teams from the 1920s. In the Brian Daboll era, they've been outscored in the first half of week one, 67-6. Grump, there's a reason why I never use the word vibe or aura in a positive manner talking about this Giants offseason and just kind of kept my mouth shut when it came to that. It's why I didn't let preseason games change my expectations for anything. Because you play the games. That's how you figure, that's how vibes matter, right? I said in the cold opening of the intro. It's like aura, vibes, all that goes out the window as soon as you either win or lose games. And the Giants have not shown that they play the games, and that helps them since 2022. It's frustrating. Every year you get excited for this team, and they not only lose, but they lose in these terrible manners that just leave you feeling hopeless. Whether it was last year where, you're talking about, are they going to bench Daniel Jones? This year where you're talking, like 2 years in a row where like one of the main talking points coming out of the game is, are you going to bench the quarterback for somebody else? It's really frustrating, especially in year 4 of a regime, but here we are. And Russell Wilson and the Giants got smoked, and you had the worst performance of any team on week 1.
What's going on, Bobby? This game literally gave me a headache. I have a headache right now. This sucked all around from start to finish. And, I don't use words like vibes and aura because they don't mean anything to me. But in general, you're right. Like none of that offseason shit. Like you can get excited about like draft picks and projection and stuff, but like just know that it's all projection. It's not results. Like results happen on the field. You play games, and what happens on the field happens on the field. And I can deal with a loss. I have no problem dealing with a loss. This was pathetic. And it was all 3 phases of the game were bad. There's very, very few bright spots to talk about tonight. And they're like, what's amazing is that this game was a shit show, but like it could have been so much worse. It could have been so much worse if Washington wasn't constantly shooting themselves in the foot this entire game, again, in all 3 phases of the game. So, I'm not excited to talk about this, but I'm ready. I'm ready to get into it.
Oh, yeah, this could have easily been like a 35-38-6. Like the score was 21-6, and that was nowhere near indicative of how bad this game was for the Giants. But it starts at the top with the quarterback. We'll get to the head coach and his involvement in all this. But with Russ, we talk about him being an upgrade. I wasn't super high on Russ, and did a mailbag saying he's ranked 22nd and stuff. But he was not even like, you didn't see the good parts of Russ with his limitations. He went 17-37, so completing less than half his passes, 168 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and 2 sacks. I'll say the one thing that just stood out as like that was really worrisome was the deep accuracy was just awful. He was underthrowing guys, even the one he completed to Malik Neighbors. Really, like his only accurate pass was the Wan'Dale Robinson drop in the 4th quarter on the slot fade. But he just had bad placement on back shoulders. And to pair this with Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka with Russell Wilson is, if there's one thing that Brian Daboll and Mike Kafka have shown positively is they adjust their offense to the quarterback that they have out there. And it just felt like they did none of that with Russell Wilson. The Tom Brady even said Kevin Burkhardt said, Brian Daboll watched every Russ play since 2012, which was over 7,000 plays. And it just did not look like an offense that was meant to suit Russ. It looked like exactly like last year's offense, the same concepts. And they just felt like not game planning for Washington, where there should have been all these like conversion routes on the outside, and you really never saw that. They just couldn't get anything going. The only thing you saw was throwing a couple balls to Malik Neighbors, and then a little bit of Wan'Dale Robinson quick game, which was the exact replica of last year's offense, but only worse because the quarterback didn't have any, doesn't have the legs that Daniel Jones did last year.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there with Russ. We saw the bad with Russ, so this is a lot of the frustration that we're going to have with Russell Wilson for however many games he plays this year, and that's a whole other conversation. I'm a little surprised that we only saw 2 sacks in this game for only 11 yards, but there was plenty of frustration of like throwaways, giving up on stuff, panic, absolute panic in the pocket. And I'm not saying that he had a clean pocket to deal with. Again, that's another conversation. But there are plays where he just like literally running in circles in the pocket at one point, giving up on stuff and just throwing things away, not seeing things down the field. There's one play where Theo Johnson was just streaking down the field. Defender fell over, didn't see it at all, didn't throw that way, even though he was looking that way. So the frustrating thing is we saw the bad with Russ that I was prepared to deal with. I think the coaching staff was prepared to deal with, but we didn't see any of the good really. I mean, there were a couple things, right? Like I think some stuff is being left out here. He did zip one right into Daniel Bellinger on the final drive of the game. Like there were some throws, but not nearly the same level. Like there were more misses that should have been better throws than there were, the opposite.
Well, it's, again, we've talked about it was like it's very much deep to check down with Russ, and then when the deep ball accuracy is not there, and we'll talk about the offensive line's participation and all this too. But it was deep to check down, but because the offensive line, it wasn't like individual guys getting their ass whipped. Hudson definitely lost a handful of times, but it was more just like they weren't creating clean pockets, right? So they were, getting driven back a little bit. It wasn't just like, 2023 where this guy's getting beat, and the quarterback's getting smacked. Really, the only time Russ has got hit like that was on a James Hudson mess up, and then on a free rusher play, it's designed to have a free rusher and you throw hard against it. It was just, all right, so Russ would either kind of do this little thing and get the ball to a check down, or he would just run out of the back of the pocket and eventually just throw the ball away. And that's why he doesn't have any interceptions, only 2 sacks, but completed less than 50% of his passes. It wasn't just flat out inaccuracy or quote unquote, bad reads. It was just him, throwing the ball away a ton, and then on 3rd and longs, he's checking the ball down. So those are all the bad things we knew about Russell Wilson. It was just, we didn't get any of the good of those vertical plays. And I was surprised. We talked about on the preview pod that we throw slot fades, and they did. They threw a lot of slot fades. But something we thought they were going to do, Grump, was like, all right, let's get Slayton and Neighbors, and they can't double both of these guys, and put them on the outside, and you can have conversion routes where they either go vertical, or if the coverage is dictating stopping the verticals, then you stop. And it just felt like they were never doing that. So it's just a lot of different, I feel like schematically, just didn't play into Russ's strengths, which again are limited, but you should still play against them. And against the Commanders defense, that kind of played into those strengths a little bit too, with how man heavy they get.
I mean, they targeted Darius Slayton one time. It was almost like he's not on the team. It's almost like they didn't give him a 3-year deal. It's almost like he hasn't been like this team's leading receiver for the last 100 million years. I have no idea what the game plan was here, and I don't know. What's frustrating to me right now, very quickly after the game, is I don't know how much to blame Russell Wilson for not seeing things and how much is just the game plan, but it doesn't feel like the game plan is correct. And you're right. It doesn't feel like the game plan played into Russell Wilson's strengths. Which begs the question of okay, so is this just an offense centered around what Jackson Dart does? Because that whole QB controversy nonsense was all smoke. I didn't even see a sideline shot of Jackson Dart during this game. And then post game, Brian Daboll was asked 3 separate times if Russell Wilson's the starter. And, the only thing he really said was that, he has confidence in Russ, and that this loss was not on Russell Wilson, that it was bigger than that. There were more mistakes, and he's not wrong. They were bad in all 3 phases of the game, but he just refused to just flat out say Russell Wilson's starting.
Yeah, he basically invited speculation, which I want to get to that in a second, but I want to stick on play calling a little bit.
Well, can we talk about red zone play calling?
That's the main thing. I mean, you get your first and goal, and you use a play action screen the Neighbors, when it's just man, just run a regular play. Then 3rd and goal, I just had no clue what they were trying to do. But then they get that penalty, and it saves them. 1st and goal at the 1. Dude, it always frustrates me, and sometimes they end up working out because you throw the ball in the first play and it works, and you get a tight end wide open or something, and you don't think about it. But first and goal to one, I will never understand not being like, all right, let's pound the ball in here 3 times. Like let's try and run the ball in here. And if you can't do that, then you've got way more bigger issues team building wise. But they do the thing to Bo, trying to throw the ball to Marcus Bo, get cute.
Well, that's
are all
okay.
over it.
Listen, I get that play and I get that wrinkle, and I think it can catch people off. But that's your first play call off that's at the top of the pile. That's what you're going to throwing to your 5th round draft pick tackle. He's going to catch the ball, and like I don't. That frustrates the absolute shit out of me. And when that's your first play call, it's almost like you have no nuts whatsoever. Like you have no confidence in your offense in any way. Like you don't have confidence to throw to your receivers, you don't have confidence to throw to your tight ends, and you don't have confidence to run the ball from like the 2-yard line. It's such a sackless play to me as a first play call.
And then you have a bad run with Scadaboo, and then you try and get a rub route to Tyrone Tracy, and then even end the game, like it felt like almost every red zone regular passing concept was there's 2 receivers to one side. The outside receiver is either running like a corner, or just something up the field. And then the number 2 receiver, the slot, is running either an out or a flat. And we're just trying to clear space for that. And they never threw it because it takes like great timing, and it plays the defense playing it the correct way. And neither one of those ever happened. Like it was just very weird where these are just it felt like everything was an all or nothing play. In the red zone, there's no opportunities, and maybe that's the way they're playing because of Russell Wilson's limitations. But you got to give options because there's just no margin for error, and teams like catch on to what you're doing, and that's exactly what the Commanders did. Like they looked where his eyes were going, they played the short stuff, and after that, there was like no options for them to go because they basically cut off all the options by the play calls they were calling. Like even like little stuff like a 3rd and 1, you go out of empty, throwing, and then Russ has to throw a sidearm pass to Wan'Dale Robinson. And what I want to talk about like the Wan'Dale stuff, because that if there's one thing I was wrong about this offseason analysis wise was like I don't think they're going to get Russ the ball, but that's where we're wrong. Is like no, they're going to continue to run that same offense, trying to get the Wan'Dale the ball in quick game, and it worked. On that second drive of the game, a couple 3rd downs, but teams squat on that stuff, and that's what happened. There was so many times where they were trying to get the ball to Wan'Dale, but Russ didn't feel comfortable, and that was what led to holding on to the ball and throwaways and dirted passes, and him not getting to second reads is because he is very much first read or bust, and the offense was built for first reads to Wan'Dale.
Yeah, I mean, Wan'Dale as a player is still somebody that I think works well, but it's the quick game stuff. It's all the around the line of scrimmage stuff that drives me nuts, and that's actually not where he ate today. I think Wan'Dale was one of the few bright spots on the offense, maybe the only. I don't know if you want to give like a half star to Cam Scadaboo for just kind of being who we thought he was at the NFL level, maybe. But Wan'Dale was 6 catches on 8 targets for 55 yards. That dude fights for every single inch. And by the way, it's absolute psycho behavior to be suplexed in the ground by 3 people. And then meanwhile, there's an entire fight going on to defend him. And he's just like walking away, flexing at the camera. Is amazing to me. Wan'Dale, when he's used that way, he really does fight for everything. He's an absolute chain mover for this offense. But all this junk throwing within like a yard of the line of scrimmage and stuff like that, like you're right. Like the sidearm pass to him was disgusting. It's just not there. It is causing panic for Russ in the pocket because it's so easy to just squat on it. I like Wan'Dale a little bit as a player, but I don't love the whole offense being generated right around the line of scrimmage. Like he can do more than that. He should do more than that. Don't force him the ball. He's not that good that he needs to be forced into this like extension of the running game from the outside, especially when you have a guy like Tyrone Tracy that moved from the wide receiver position down to the running back position. He can do that. And you have a loaded running backfield to allow that flexibility to move him around too. So I can't stand the way that Wan'Dale is being like force fed the ball.
Well, and again, even on 3rd and 1, like what happened to like, getting 2 tight ends under center play action or us stuff? You just never saw any of that. And like with the Wan'Dale conference, because Wan'Dale ends up with 6 catches, 55 yards. He converted 3 third downs on that field goal drive. And, at the end of the game, he had a rub route for 20 yards, and then he dropped a deep pass too. But like Slayton, the other receiver in all this, gets 0 catches, 0 yards, only 1 target. It just seems like a very much repetitive of last year, where it's like, why don't we include Slayton within the game plan? Because they're going to double Malik Neighbors. They know how much you like to force. Like that gives this guy one-on-one coverage, and they never. Because I was looking for it, especially on money downs, and it was just like they were never ever considering him. Like, and he only got the 1 target. It was a slot fade that should have been called pass interference, where the corner's literally like pulling on his face mask. But whatever. And it's just like, man, he's going to get one-on-ones against, Trey Amos. Give him an opportunity. And they just never did that. And it just feels like Brian Daboll doesn't include Slayton into the plan until he's forced to. Which, regardless of what you think about Slayton, like, he's got one-on-one versus Trey Amos. That should give him some opportunities, more than 1 target.
I mean, if you want to create explosive plays and get chunk plays, and that's not just me saying that as a buzzword, it's something that Daboll always talks about. I don't understand not including the only like super fast guy on your team that can actually run around and catch a ball. Like Jalen Hyatt's not even seeing the field. We're not talking about Jalen Hyatt. So as far as I'm concerned, Darius Slayton's the only one that can really stretch the field deep and just be that guy. To not even think about him or include him or have it doesn't make any sense to me. It's like we want to do everything within 5 yards, and I don't get it. You're muted.
Do you want to talk about Malik Neighbors? Because I thought he was like the one guy on offense who could do something positive. But let's talk about like the whole after game press conference with Brian Daboll. And if you didn't catch it, basically, they asked him quick, like, did you consider putting Jackson Dart in? Nope, didn't consider that. And then they asked Brian Daboll if he would go to Jackson Dart, can consider benching Russell Wilson for Jackson Dart. And he's like, no, we believe in, he didn't say no. He's just like, yeah, the game just ended. We got to go back and watch film, which is like, oh my gosh, are you saying yes? And then somebody else asked again, basically the similar conversation. Like, you don't want to, and the third time they asked him, they basically told him flat out, like, you not answering this question makes us all think that you are considering this. And he's like, this game's not, like you said in the earlier, he's like, this game's not on Russell Wilson. Like, we still have a lot of confidence in Russell Wilson. And he did some like, I believe in Russell Wilson stuff, but he didn't just back it, which I don't think they're going to be. Jackson Dart's going to be starting for them next week against Dallas. But it does make me think that we're going to see Dart way sooner than people talked about in all their offseason plans. And I think they are going to go to him fairly quick. I think as week 3 can be is like the quickest you'll see him. There's no way. I just don't think they're going to do it after 1 game, because that's just like the ultimate panic move. But I can clearly see him after 3 games, which I would still say, like, you need to stick to what your plan is to develop this guy, because you talk about like job safety and whatever. But here's the reality, Grump, is we do have short memories as fans. It's very funny to hear like some of the things that were said to me a week ago, and then look at where we are now. In preseason being like, I can't believe you guys wanted Joe Shane gone. But when Dart comes in, and if Dart looks good, everyone will be like, well, we got our guy. We got to keep him. Like, whether that's 8 games or 14 games. But I do think we're going to Dart sooner than we realize. But here's the other thing I'll say too on this, Grump, is if they didn't name Dart the QB2 and Daboll just saying like, I put him there because he earned it, I think we'd be having conversations about like, do you go to Jameis over Russell Wilson? Because there's one guy who's going to use the middle of the field and push it the way you want. Jameis, for all his issues, he does that, and he does it well to a point where he starts turning over the ball.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. So there's a lot. So we're doing this right after the game. It's week 1. The way the NFL has changed in the last couple of years with shortening down the preseason, and there's a lot of rust kicking off in week 1 around the league. I mean, I'm not trying to say that the Giants were, this performance was in any way on par with other teams that lost today. That's not true. I'm not trying to say that, but it is very early to have a super pound the table like reaction, like this needs to happen now kind of reaction, especially, on offense, you're missing the left tackle. We knew that was going to be like an issue here. I personally, I think that Dan Quinn always just has Brian Daboll's number. I don't care if he's trotting out a 78-year-old Bobby Wagner. It doesn't matter. Dan Quinn just seems to understand how to just destroy Brian Daboll's offense. Like it's without fail. It's the worst that we look on offense with our starting core. I mean, I'm not going to include any Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito stuff into this conversation, but it is way too early to have like a quick switch. My big thing with,
but here's the thing is, I think next week we're not doing we're not doing a mailbag question this week of like, should Dart start this week? But if next week looks just as bad or close to as bad, I am going to predict that they're going to Dart for week 3.
Oh, absolutely. So there is that part of it. There's also the part that, pregame that we were kind of, like, I don't know. There seems to be a package of plays for Jackson Dart at a moment's notice, get ready. There is a chance that was just to throw them off. But by the time that news broke, their game planning was already done. So I don't really think that was entirely smoke. I think that there is some fire to that. But in general, this season, wins and losses, I know everyone thinks is like, oh, it's year 4, no excuses, year 4. The clock is not based on year 4. The clock is based on when they got their quarterback. And like it or hate it.
That's just going to change, though. That mindset is an offseason mindset. It's going to change.
I disagree.
Once the games start getting played.
I disagree on the win and loss thing. But what it can't look like is like this shit. And I've been consistent with this. Like the number of wins and losses, that sometimes wins and losses are fluky, whether in your favor and against your favor. But it's a matter of how it looks on the field. And there was nothing, absolutely nothing worth bragging about in this game. Nothing. And if it continues to look like this, they know that they have to save it because I do think that the win-loss record, they have like a leash on the win-loss record this year, but it can't look like this week after week.
If they win 4 or 5 games, it's going to look like this a lot. Not every week. There'll be some weeks where we're on here being like, what a great offensive game plan, but it's going to look like this. But let's talk about the offensive line because we haven't done that. But first, we got to talk to you about body armor. What? Body armor. You need body armor on days like this to lift your spirits. And this episode is brought to you by Body Armor Sports Drink. Rewrite your routine and choose better with Body Armor. Body Armor is real hydration with electrolytes, coconut water, and no artificial dyes, flavors or sweeteners with great tasting flavors like strawberry banana and orange mango. In fact, fun fact, my cousin, who's also a Giants fan, I was hanging out. He's like, do you have any of those orange mangoes? I gave him a bunch of orange mangoes because he loves the orange mango. Grab Body Armor Sports Drink today at your local grocery store. Body Armor. Choose better. You'll be glad you did. The offensive line. We talked about it a little bit before. James Hudson was genuinely really bad. Gave up a quarterback hit and 4 pressures. John, what was frustrating is like communication was the one like strong point of this offensive line last year. And John Runyon gave up a sack on a bad stunt pickup with him and JMS. JMS did good on that. Runyon didn't. The play where Neighbors cooked the receiver on the outside and Russ gets hit and the ball lands short. That's James Hudson messing up a stunt pickup. It certainly was not good. And especially James Hudson, I thought was really bad. But again, I don't think the other guys, left guard to right tackle, were like getting just totally dominated where it's like where you couldn't throw the ball down the field on the outside. Like, again, there was plays where that was like that, but it was not this overwhelmingly bad offensive line performance. But it was a bad offensive line performance. But I think this is like a product of the way Joe Schoen has addressed the offensive line because they're not proactive about having a good offensive line. They are reactive and plug their offensive line. We look at what Joe Schoen's done and this is probably more of a mailbag, take by me, but Jermaine Illuminor is like their best offensive line transaction. But you look at just through the drafts, like the first draft class, they draft Evan Neal, Josh Azudu, and Marcus McKeithen. Obviously, all those guys were really bad, and Neal and Azudu being totally terrible hurts. But their draft after that, 3 drafts after that, they've only drafted John Michael Schmitz and Marcus Bowe. And that's crazy. Like, to have an offensive line issue, and that's what you do in the last 3 years. And then their free agent signings, again, Illuminor, a very good one, but you forget that they signed him to play freaking guard. John Runyon is a total, like, I'm plugging. This is a let's just plug a hole. This is not an advantage. This is a plug a hole contract. And we all knew that when they signed him. And then Greg Van Roten, like, he wasn't here until they needed to plug another hole because Evan Neal was injured and they moved Illuminor to right tackle and they brought him back. And then their only, pick in the draft was a 5th round offensive lineman. James Hudson, was a plug. Like, oh, we got to pay somebody to be the swing tackle because of the Azudu swing tackle failure. And he's better than Azudu, but he's still bad. They're just reactive with their offensive line, and they've never been able to create an advantage with it without Thomas, and Thomas is not a Joe Shane addition. Like, so without Andrew Thomas, they don't have any positives. They have guys who aren't these total negatives, and John Michael Schmitz and Evan Neal and Josh Azudu are draft picks that should have been that didn't work out. But it's just, they feel so reactive with the offensive line, and you're never going to have it be an advantage, especially in the run game. And then you're going to have games in the pass game where they are an issue on the reason why you lost. Part of the reason why you lost.
I don't want to get into a whole like regime thing on the construction of the offensive line. Partially because it's week 1, partially because it's been discussed before, and partially because I don't totally agree with all of that. I think that there's other factors in there, but the main thing here is that I expected Hudson to play poorly, and I think he played about as poorly as I thought, which was not like a disaster out there. It was just bad. But I don't think any one player on the offensive line would say played well. I think Jermaine Illuminor played the best. I thought Van Roten got smoked on like the first play of the game. Like, just absolutely spun around. JMS played his typical like mediocre to below average performance.
Gets pushed back consistently in the run game, not doing anything positive in the pass game.
I don't think John Runyon had his best game at all. I thought he looked pretty bad. I think as a unit, they looked terrible. But again, I'm not saying that as an excuse for why this game was bad. They were bad all over the place, but it was remarkable how bad they all were. And I understand, like, Washington got like some real beef on there. Javon Kinlaw is actually somebody. Daron Payne is still somebody, despite how long he's been there. But still, it was notably very bad.
Yeah, I mean, they just need Andrew Thomas, which if you have an Andrew Thomas player, you need him, but
it's tough. Also,
I hate having the second best offensive player on this offensive line. It feels like a foregone conclusion that he's going to leave in free agency because he wants big money and the Giants aren't willing to pay him because of, that might be more than what he's actually worth or whatever. It just feels frustrating to not have anybody to really write home about besides Andrew Thomas, who's injured and not a Joe Shane addition, and then Jermaine Illuminor, who, again, is their best transaction, maybe their best pound-for-pound free agent deal they've had. But like, we don't even like if we were all predicting if he's going to be here next year or not, we would all probably say not.
Oh, for sure. And also the false start that he got, I guess I'm just going to submit that I don't know what a false start is by a tackle anymore. That looked like every other play that every offensive lineman that's ever played. It's like, that's not a false start. You guys are crazy. It looks the same to me. I don't know how that was a false
I wish
start.
They would call it consistently like that, though, because they have this weird rule where like Lane Johnson and those guys, like, that's the way they should call it. But here's where I actually blame the offensive line outside of James Hudson more for this than I do the passing game. Is the run game. I mean, there was just no easy runs for the running backs. 15 carries for 30 yards for the running backs. Partly, I think, is because they just don't play into their strength as a run offense. It felt like they kept on just wanting to split zone. They were using Wan'Dale Robinson as the crack block on split zone. Where it's like, that's a failure, and it led to negative plays. And then you just always had one guy messing up, whether it's Greg Van Roten on the first play of the game, John Michael Schmitz getting blown up, And then, other, they had these tight formations where the receivers were making mistakes. It's just, that's where I really blame the offensive line. They certainly had a bad pass blocking performance, but in the run game, show me one run play where it's like, oh man, good job. I mean, their longest run of the day was Singletary on that 8-yard run. That was the best blocked one. After that, I mean, Tyrone Tracy's longest run was 6 yards. And we'll talk about the Commanders, run success rate, but they, had less than a 40% success rate running the ball. So, obviously was bad all around with the offensive line. Do you want to talk about the defense, or you got any last offensive notes? I know we didn't do the Malik Neighbors stuff. Maybe that could be a mailbag question.
Yeah, I mean, we can table some of the Malik Neighbors stuff because I want to ruminate on it a little bit. But Neighbors, it is clear that this offense is going to function through Malik Neighbors. We can. One thing I do want to mention: Theo Johnson stunk out loud in this game.
Oh,
absolutely stunk out loud. And then now we can switch to defense whenever you're ready.
Yeah, it's just he was terrible with drops. I think he had like the worst drop rate in the NFL for tight ends last year, and then just has two. And even one of them was like a 3rd and 10 check down. There's two guys. Like, it would have not been a successful play, but it's still just catch the ball. And I know he had that little whatever route that got called back due to some penalty, but like, if you're not going to be making positives, you can't have those drops in there too. Like, and then when Bellinger, who, as much as I don't think Bellinger is this dynamic player, there's one thing he does do. He doesn't drop a single pass. Like, he's not going to be giving you this threat down the field or anything, but he's at least going to catch the ball when it's thrown his way. Defensively, there's so many different ways I want to go onto this, whether it's Shane Bowen schematically, the linebackers. But here's like my main frustration is I'm going to go through some second downs. And this is every second down that was 10 or 11 yards or longer. So like, this is like this is where you have the advantage. This is what we've been talking about all offseason with this pass rush, is getting in these situations. 2nd and 16, 16-yard pass, first down. 2nd and 19, 13-yard pass, 11-yard run, first down. 2nd and 21, 9-yard pass, 21-yard pass, first down. 2nd and 19, 8-yard pass, incomplete, punt. 2nd and 14, defensive holding, automatic first down. 2nd and 17, 12-yard run, 19-yard pass, first down. 2nd and 15, 15-yard pass, first down. And so it's not even like 2nd and 11 to 2nd and 12. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 plays that are 2nd and 14 or more. 6 of them turned into first downs. And I think that's a product of this run defense being bad and being able to get those chunk runs whenever you're in there. But it just, they played scared of Jaden Daniels. Like, that's flat out, and they played bad as well on the back end in the 2nd and 3rd. But every time they got in that situation, they would rush 4, which is fine, but the linebackers would be sagging off 10 yards. The safeties would be sagging off 20 yards, and they're just giving it. It's like, all right, on the outside, we could throw an out route or an in route. On the inside, we could just throw the ball, on these in routes to tight ends and check the ball down on these little 8-yard stop routes, and just gave them whatever they wanted. That being with the linebackers playing like shit. Bobby Okereke was terrible in coverage. He was just, I don't know if it was him or Shane Bowen, but he's just, eyes were on Jaden Daniels and not actually looking at the routes play out and trying to undercut stuff. Darius Moasow has to go in there because Micah McFadden gets injured. They immediately attack him for a touchdown where Bobby Okereke could have undercut that. And they're just left like, getting killed up the seams. And Drew Phillips is giving plays down the field as well too, and man coverage. They just gave them the middle of the field all game long, which again, I do think is a little Jaden Daniels specific because they played afraid of him and they're not going to play that same way against other quarterbacks. But regardless, like, you never gave yourself an opportunity, because anytime you got those wins, you're like, all right, well, just here, let's let you get back at 3rd and manageable at least.
I thought the safeties and the linebackers played pretty bad in this game. Bobby Okereke looks like he's playing with absolutely no instincts anymore. The Austin Eckler play, I mean, he just completely got cement feet and just let him run right around him. I'm glad that you said that you thought he could have undercut that touchdown pass to Zach Ertz. I thought the same thing, but we never really got a proper like camera angle of it, where it's like, I don't know if maybe I'm just like being optimistic here. He looks bad. He doesn't look good. It was reported that I think like the front office or the coaching staff, they seem to be split on whether or not they like Bobby Okereke. I don't know. I don't like him after today. It looked absolutely pathetic. And, Darius Muasau going in there, I know they like him, but I don't know that they like him as like a starter, certainly not yet. They don't like him without like a thumper next to him. But in general, they just left the middle of the field wide open. And this is not even counting how many throws were behind receivers by Jaden Daniels, how many drops that were right on the money. I mean, they could have had at least another 100 yards in passing in this game. Not to mention Washington gifted the Giants 90 yards in penalty yards in this game.
Oh yeah. They played like, again, where we talk about, the defense that they just get, they got tired up. No, like the defense, this should have been 35 points. I mean, Jaden threw a ball behind Ertz that Ertz dropped on their third down on the first drive. On their third drive, just missed a wide open Terry McLaurin, for which at least would have been down to the 20 or whatever, and could have been a touchdown. He missed, Daboll Williams beat Drew Phillips on a third down where Jaden just throws it out of his range. The end of half intentional grounding, which should have been 3 points for them. Like they left, and again, that's just like the big ones. Like there was plenty of other missed throws and drops by Jaden Daniels and his receivers. Like that could have been a lot more points in this game. But I'll say this, and I want to get to the run defense. Dexter Lawrence is probably the most disappointing player out of this game, because we didn't have huge expectations for us, had bigger expectations than what he performed. He didn't do anything. And sometimes you go and you look at, the box score with a guy who gets double teamed like Dex. But anytime I focus on Dex, like there's times where he got pinned down in the run game, double teamed, where, I get it. You didn't beat a double team, but like that's what he's supposed to do.
Right.
And he didn't give you anything as a pass rusher. Like the double teams just eliminated him. I get, like, if they left him one-on-one, he could have had this awesome game, but that's not what he's going to get. And he's overcome that. And in this game, they had his number, and he didn't make the impact. Like Abdul Carter made an impact. Brian Burns made an impact. Kayvon Thibodeau made an impact. Dexter Lawrence really made no positive impact besides taking on double teams in this game.
I think if there is one, I'm going to echo all of that. But I think if there is one thing that kind of looked okay is the pass rush did sort of do what we thought they would. They abused the right-hand side. They got around Josh Connerly. Whether it was Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns, or Abdul Carter, they all got there. And I just think I don't know. If they're going to rush 4 like this, they really hamstrung themselves. There were plenty of times where Abdul Carter was doing exactly what we hoped he wouldn't do, and that was just sitting back and spying, and not just like pinning his ears back and going. You're just really just taking Abdul Carter out of the game at that point. And that was super frustrating for me. And that right there, I mean, the blame can go nowhere else but in the scheme there. I think that's just a total. Again, you're playing scared of an offense rather than just playing what you do. You have all these weapons here, and you're just kind of keeping them in their holster. They really could have just abused the shit out of the right side of that line, and they just kind of did the normal stuff.
Yeah, well, and again, I like the way Abdul Carter played in this. Like, let me pull up my Abdul Carter notes. I mean, he had a sack and 2 pressures, and he didn't play like a full-time role, and he pulled, let's see. Hold on. He had a sack. No, he had a half a sack. Oh, those numbers went away. And 2 pressures on like 20-something pass rushing snaps. But like he had a pressure from a stack linebacker position, landing him on the inside, on the edge. Like he was winning.
Yes.
You won't get the official number, but like the tentative number was like an 18% pass rush win rate, which is elite in this game. He had the tackle for a loss paired with Kayvon. And he also had the punt ball. He almost had a couple punt blocks. Like that is something where we really didn't talk about. And I actually remember in rookie camp, or the first OTAs when they interviewed Michael Gabriel or whatever. They're like, "What's it like to have work with Abdul Carter, knowing he's probably never going to be working with you after this camp or whatever?" Well, no, like he might actually have a big special teams impact. He looked good. He didn't get the sack or that one play that really stood out, but he looked really good. Brian Burns, the one sack on the screen, like good job getting advantage of that. And the second one, again, taking advantage of Josh Connerly, Kayvon Thibodeau taking, like, that's what we asked for. It just feels like it would have been so much more effective if Dexter Lawrence was doing his thing. Like if
absolutely.
Dexter Lawrence was doing his thing, that could have been, a great defensive performance. It was just those guys doing their thing without Dex.
And I'll even say that the one sack that Brian Burns had on the screen, that was, that's good that he, did his job or whatever. But if you watch that, it's like Cordell Flott, Drew Phillips, and Abdul Carter all just completely blew up that screen. There was nowhere for Jaden Daniels to throw that ball, and there's no backup plan when the screen is just completely red like that, and you had Brian Burns just completely unblocked in your face. So, I mean, credit to Brian Burns, whatever, but that was like a collective defensive effort there for that sack. In terms of the run game, where, it was really frustrating that they're just getting dominated at the line of scrimmage, getting pushed off the ball. What's really frustrating is not only that, it's every single, and this was the same thing we saw in the Jets preseason game. Every single time, they're all falling forward. Running backs are all falling forward. There's no one pushing the pile back, and they're just getting beaten back an additional 2-3 yards every single time. Then you turn a 3-yard run into a 5-yard run, and it's like, you'll never be able to win with a defense that bad.
They were able to get yards before contact consistently, and I'll be interested to see what those numbers actually were when those things show up tomorrow. But they ran for 220 rushing yards, which when I put together, every Monday morning after the game, I put together where the Giants offense and defense are ranking and points, passing and rushing. Going to assume they're going to be 32nd in rushing defense, and they will be 32nd in scoring offense, a very familiar place. But it's not even just like, oh, they had a few explosive plays, which was their tagline all summer. Like, oh, yeah, it wasn't that bad, but there's just some explosive plays. And okay, well, the Commanders had a 72% successful run rate on design runs, 76% including scrambles. 22 of 29 runs were successful. And what I mean by that, that's measured by getting 40% of the yards needed for a first down on first down, 60% on second down, and then 100% on third and fourth down. And you're saying, well, how does that compare to the rest of the league? Last year, the number one running back in the NFL in that was Bijan Robinson at 60%. And again, they were at 76% in the game. That's unbelievable to get that type of impact from your rushing game. There was times, Grump, where they had DJ Davidson, Nacho, and Elijah Garcia out there as on 3 D lineman sets on purpose. Like, not if somebody's injured. Like, no, that's just who we are. Like, they didn't take the depth of that room serious, or even that second starter thing. Darius Alexander is a healthy scratch to start week 1, and it's showing up. And Bobby Okereke playing bad goes into that. Then you take Micah McFadden out and put Darius Moss out on the field. I think that's going to really, really possibly hurt that run defense more than what I was already worried about it. And you don't have Dexter Lawrence just dominating double teams and getting off them, and that's what's going to happen. And next week is the real, not the test, but next week you play a Dallas team that's a bad rushing offense and they don't like to run the ball. If you can't do it well, then you're screwed for the entire year.
Well, I'm not really sure how they're going to be able to handle CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Not to get too far ahead in that, but I think also Cordell Flott played, I would say, predictably. He had his moments where he looked okay. I mean, right on the opening break, he could have, the whole trajectory of the start of this season could have looked differently if he actually hangs on to that pick, jumping around on Deebo Samuel. But he had his moments of like looking good. And then his moments where he just got absolutely turned around and abused. And I think that is just kind of what we're going to have to expect from Cordell Flott. I'm not sure how much Deonte Banks we really saw.
He played on third down. He had 10 passing snaps, wasn't targeted. So I guess that's a good thing that he wasn't targeted. But it'd be interesting to see how they look to divvy up that going forward, because eventually you got to pick one guy.
Yeah, I mean, this is not really a sustainable a 17 game plan. And I think you have to pick your battles with what you get with each of them.
Flott had the nice pass breakup on Debo, but he also got routed up by Chris Moore, who we didn't even talk about.
He just got totally turned around by Chris Moore.
The Noah Brown one, I will give him a little bit of grace, where the little play action on that just totally sucked up Drew Phillips and the linebackers, and there was no inside presence, and he's playing cover 3, so he's protecting the outside. So he could have made a play there, but I'm not going to like burn him for that. But the Chris Moore one was just like unbelievably bad. And then, Drew Phillips. I want to see more out of Drew Phillips. He had that stop that turned into the 4th down on Debo. That's the great we see of Drew. But we also saw him give up plays down the field, and he's not targeted down the field a lot because of the position he plays. But whenever he has been, he's been bad at it. And I can't have missed tackles either. That Debo Samuel rushing touchdown, Drew Phillips had him wrapped up and he was able to run through that tackle. So that's a negative there. I want to see more out of him. I possibly want to talk about the 2024 draft class on Mailbag, or maybe next week's Mailbag, and get a second game of sample size before talking about it. But this is where you go from year 1 to year 2. I can't just have a nice play here or there. I want to see consistently good play to count you as an advantage and somebody I'm banging. Look at what we got in the 3rd round pick. You could start for a few years, but for me to be proud of you as a 3rd round pick, I need to see more from him in year 2. So
I thought he was only targeted one time downfield, and I didn't think it was bad coverage. I actually think it was one of the few where Jaden Daniels really zipped it in there.
He had the 3rd and 11 over route to Debo. Then he had the one he was targeted 6 times, gave up 5 catches, 46 yards. The one being that 20-yard, and had a couple other quick game ones. And then the incompletion was a Debo drop, or Jaden overthrew it a little bit. So he didn't get burnt where he's 10 yards behind a guy.
But the one completion deep, the 20-yarder there, I didn't think he was in bad position. I actually just think that was just a really good offensive play. I don't know. I have to rewatch it again with all 22 and stuff. But like you said, he wasn't toast out there.
I want to see more out of him too, though.
Yeah, where he shines, like you said, was in that 4th down stop. And that's not the only evidence we have of him doing that. That's where he looks best. But yeah.
And again, the missed tackles and stuff, which has always been an issue for him. I think he gave up this. We pulled up in this player profile episode. They had the 2nd most yards allowed due to missed tackles or some shit last year. Is there anything else? We're at 47 minutes. Anything else from this game before we roll?
Nothing specifically. The only other thing I guess I'll note is I don't really know why Jamie Gillen kicked the opening kickoff. That had me seriously worried. But then Graham Gano came out there for every other kickoff and kicked a 50-plus yard field goal. So I don't know what that was about. Maybe they're trying to do something with the new rules, but I don't know. They only did it the one time.
I'll be listening to Michael go. That's the only thing that I've really asked Mikey, the special teams coordinator. It's why did you use 2 different kickoff kickers? And he's going to give us a 2-minute answer. I'm going to be excited for it. Last thing we want to talk about before we go. We joked, now last year everyone that left the Giants just had amazing seasons, and we're what would really make us end it all if a certain quarterback did. Well, the only quarterback to lead a scoring drive in every drive of the game in NFL history, I think, is freaking Daniel Jones in his debut for the Colts. He goes 22 of 29, 272 yards, 1 touchdown deep, 2 rushing touchdowns was thrown. I was like, this is we are cursed. I don't believe in curses, but now I do. We literally are cursed. That not only are we not only is Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney doing well and Leonard Williams, now Daniel Jones is going to go, 13-4, and the Colts are finally going to have their quarter. What if he gets another team to give him a big contract? Wouldn't that be something?
That would be certainly interesting. I'm not going to bet on this being a continued success week after week. I actually predicted Indy to win that game. But there's a million things that go into it, but it's certainly gut-wrenching to see that kind of shit happen. But and again, it's not like the Giants lost today. The Giants got completely outclassed today. And then in the flip side, everyone wanted to say everything was Daniel Jones's fault. He goes out there and has a great day and they win their game. It is pretty remarkable.
It's just unbelievable. Like we're cursed. Like, you know, I can't remember. It was probably some random stream like in May where I'm like, that was, you know, joking with some call-in show. And then, yep, that's exactly what freaking happened. So we're cursed. It's okay. We hopefully one day we're not cursed. So we will schedule. I am going to do an online report. I'm not looking forward to it, but I am going to do an online report. It's not an every week thing this year. But we'll do one for week 1, the film review, and then Wednesday, me and Grump will be back for a mailbag. We'll put the tweet out on Tuesday calling for those questions, and then Friday we'll be back for a preview pod. So we'll see you then. Appreciate you guys for sticking with us. Don't give up on the Giants or Giants Nation just yet. Let's get to week 2. It's just week 1. Every year there's overreactions to week 1. So we will see you when we see you. Until then, let's go Big